Welcome back students. Today I am going to teach you Unit 8 Biomechanics and Sports. This is the physical education chapter number 8 and the first part I am going to teach you today. And first of all, before starting, let us start discussing some key points on which topic I will read this. First of all, as it is 8 number chapter, so points are like 8.1, 8.2 in this way. First of all, 1 number point, meaning and importance of biomechanics. Number 2, types of movement, flexion, extensions, abduction, adduction. Number 3, Newton's laws of motion and its application in sports. Number 4, friction and sports. Now 8.1, that is first point discussion. I am going to discuss the first point, meaning and importance of biomechanics. So meaning of biomechanics, bio plus mechanics, that is biomechanics. Bio means living organisms and branch of physical science which deals with the force acting on a body in a static conditions or in a moving conditions. Branch of a physical science which deals with the force acting on a body in a static condition or in a moving condition. Biomechanics, therefore, biomechanics is a study of the forces and their effects on human being. Human being is moving or in static condition. Sometimes it is in moving condition, sometimes it is in the static condition. So biomechanics is a study of forces and their effects on human being is moving or in static condition. Now the importance of biomechanics has been given. In the importance of biomechanics, first of all, in selection and improvement of the technique, to develop new training method. Next, to prevent from sports injuries, for movement of economy. Next point, to speed up economy or to develop advanced sports, to develop advanced sports equipment, to speed up recovery process, to improve sports skill. So these are given. So in selection and improvement of the technique, to develop new training method, to prevent from sports injuries, for movement of economy. Next, to develop advanced sports equipment. Next, to speed up recovery process, to improve sports skill. I am going to turn the next page. In the next page, which is not the importance of the biomechanics, improve of technique, to understand the structure of movement and effects of forces on the movement, to understand physiology of human body, improvement of sports equipment. So answer C, this is C option is answer, to understand physiology of human body. Next, biomechanics deal with muscle involved in movement. Next, effect of force on different movements done by human body. Next, to understand the physiology of body, to understand time and distance concept of the various movements. So answer is second one, effects of the force on different movements done by the human body. So here options are giving like A, B, C, D, but here E, F, G, H given. So you can make the second option is the correct answer. Now long type question is given. What is biomechanics and how it helps in the field of sports and games? So here you can see bio means living organisms and mechanics means branch of physics which deals with the effect of the force on the object. sometimes it is moving or static condition. Biomechanics is a branch of the science which deals with the effect of the forces acting on a living organism. Uh, Moving condition or in a stationary condition means static condition. Biomechanics helps in the field of sports in the following way. Which are the ways in which biomechanics helps in the sports? Like improvement of technique, improvement of the equipment, improvement in training method, development of skill. Number one, improvement of the technique. Biomechanics helps to improve the technique. It determines how the technique Biomechanics helps to improve the technique. It determines how the technique should be executed or to get best result. And example, shifting from the orthodox to a disco foot technique is short put. So shifting from the orthodox style technique, that is short put. So here improvement in the technique. Biomechanics helps to improve the technique. It determines how the technique should be executed to get the best result. Next point, improvement of the equipment. It helps to improve equipment according to nature and safety of the game. For example, in increase in the thickness of the mat for the high jump. So if we are just increasing the technique and make the mat for the high jump thicker, then it will be very much helpful. Improvement in the training method. It helps to develop new training method to get better result. For example, development of the isotonic method to develop strength. Sometimes we implement isotonic method for the development of our strength. Development of the skill. It helps to develop skill of the sports. Example, development in the skill of the fielding in cricket. So you have to develop the skill of fielding in cricket. That is the development skill. Skill means personal skill. What do you understand by the word biomechanics? Write down any important two importance of biomechanics. I have already discussed, and you can note down these points. Next question: biomechanics helps to improve. Biomechanics helps to improve the technical skill and equipment in sport. So how do you explain this? With suitable example, you have to explain. Next, what do you understand by biomechanics? Explain its importance with 4 suitable examples. Next question I would like to discuss, what is biomechanics, how it helps to promote sports and games. Now 8.2, that is the point I would discuss now, types of movement. Types of movement: flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. So flexion, what is it? Decrease in the angle, sagittal plane and frontal axis. Adduction, extension. Adduction means extension, increases angle, sagittal plane, frontal axis. Adduction. Next is abduction. Abduction is a way from midline of body, frontal planes, sagittal axis. Next point I would like to discuss: adduction towards median of body. Adduction towards, so flexion, extension, then abduction, then, so second point, this is actually not the adduction. This is not adduction, this is point is given, this is flexion, this is extension given. Fourth number point, that is adduction towards adduction that is towards the midline of body, frontal plane, sagittal axis. These are the short form given. I am going to the next page. This chapter is very small and it is very readable part, very easy to read for all of you. Next, some MCQ questions are given. Here, match the following: flexion, extension, abduction and adduction. So flexion is matching with A number is matching with first number, like increase in angle. Extension is matching with decrease in angle, 4 number. Abduction is matching with away from midline of body. Adduction is matching with number D is matching with towards the midline of the body. Here option C is option 3 is answer. Next, bending of elbow. Bending of elbow when our hand is going towards our chest is known as flexion, extension, abduction or adduction. So here option A is the answer, flexion. Opening of hand sideways when our hand is moving away from body is an example of abduction, adduction, flexion or extension. So option A, abduction is answer. Now long term questions. Some question has been given, like discuss the adduction, abduction, flexion, extension with suitable example in detail. Name the movements which occur in the leg press exercise. So let's discuss all this one by one. First of all, abduction. Abduction, it is a movement in which moving body part move away from the midline of body. Next point, it always occur on frontal plane or and sagittal axis. Example, moving of hand in sidewise dissection, the hand going away from the body. That means hand going away from the body. Next is adduction, is the movement in which moving part coming towards the midline of the body, means that is coming towards the body. It always occurs at the frontal plane sagittal axis. Example, to back his hand to attention position from the hands opening side stage. So you are going to take your hand back with attached to your body. Flexion, it is a movement in which the joint on which the movement occurs, there will be a decrease in the angle. So here in which you can see there will be decrease in the angle between a bone of that joint. So in which the joint on which the movement occurs, there will be a decrease in the angle. No, there's such little angle will be there between the bones of the joint. Next point of it, it always occurs at the sagittal plane frontal axis. Example, bending of elbow and bending of knee. Next point, extension. What is extension? It is the movement in which the angle between the bone of that joint on which movement is occurred will increase. It always occur at sagittal plane frontal axis. Example, straightening of elbow from bending position, if you are making straight of it. Straightening of knee from the bending position in a leg press exercise. In leg press exercise, flexion of knee joint and extension of the knee joint takes place. Next, some questions have been given. What is abduction? You can write these points I have discussed above. What is abduction? Give two suitable examples. What is flexion? Give two suitable examples. Differentiate between flexion and extension with suitable examples. Differentiate between abduction and adduction. Now some extra questions more for 5 marks given. Explain adduction and abduction, adduction, flexion, extension with suitable example. How we can identify the abduction, adduction, flexion, extension movement in various joints of our body. Explain with example. Now Newton's law. Now the point is Newton's law. Newton's law of motion and application in sports. Newton's law of motion. There, you know very well, there are three laws of Newton related to the motion. First law of motion, law of inertia. Second law of motion, law of acceleration. Third law of motion, that is law of action. Next page I am going to discuss about objective type question, MCQ type question. Newton's second law is known as law of action, action reaction, law of inertia, law of acceleration, law of velocity. So answer is third one, law of acceleration. And in the long jump takeoff, which law works? First law of Newton, second law, third law, law of conservation of mass. So it is the third law of Newton, that is option C is coming. Next, discuss about the question, what are the Newton's law of motion? What are the Newton's law of motion? Explain the application of the second law of motion. Any two applications. So first law of motion, law of inertia. So first law of motion is known as law of inertia. Any object will be remained in its position until any object will be remained in its position until or unless any external force is applied on it. So living object, some objects which are living in one place cannot move until and unless you are just giving the force and energy, and moving object cannot stop until and unless you force to stop it. Next law of motion, that is law of acceleration, that is law of acceleration. And third one, law of second law of motion, that is law of acceleration. The rate of the change of the acceleration is directly proportional. And here the rate of the change of acceleration is directly proportional to the force applied on the object and inversely proportional to the mass of the object. That means actually acceleration is depend upon the fact how much force you are applying on the object, and it is also oppositely proportional to the mass of the object. Third law of motion, law of action and reaction, and there will be equal and opposite reaction to each and every action. You know very well, there is an equal and opposite reaction to each and every action. This is the third law. Application of the second law of motion. Application of the second law of motion. Example 1. According to the second law, of motion, if we want to produce acceleration in football, then a large force will be required to put on the ball. In the same ratio to which force is applied, the ball will be accelerated. So here uh, for moving a object like a football, if you are kicking a football, so you have to give a proper force to make it accelerate. Second example, landing of the high jump initially down done on the sand, done on sand, but with the time change now landing of the high jump now landing of high jump will be done on the mats as according to the second law, when the rate of change of momentum will be done in a large time period, less force will be produced, which will helpful to avoid injury. So according to the second law, landing on the mats is more favorable to the high jumper to avoid injury. This is the example is given for the application for the second law of motion. Two examples are given. Now some extra question given, like explain first law of motion with suitable examples, second law of motion with suitable examples, explain all three laws of motion. To accelerate the object, what conditions should be followed according to the second law of motion, explain the suitable example. Now going to discuss this next topic, friction and sports. Friction is a force, you know very well. The surface which has less friction, we can slip and fall down. But if the surface is having more friction, then we can stop, we can balance ourselves. Like ice is having less friction. So friction is a force develops when the surface when the surface of the two objects comes in contact to each other, and there will be a relative motion between these objects, or tends to do relative motion between these two objects. Friction force always act in opposite direction to the movement. So friction helps one to stop or control the motion. Mechanical friction, static friction, mechanical friction is of that this is the division is given. Mechanical friction, now it is divided: static friction and dynamic friction. Dynamic friction are of two types, like sliding friction and rolling friction. There are another fluid friction is there. Mechanical friction, that is static friction, dynamic friction, and sliding friction and rolling friction. So dynamic frictions are is of two types, sliding friction and rolling friction. And there is another type, fluid friction is there. I'm going to the next page. As some MCQ questions are given, the force which oppose the relative motion between the surface of the two objects is known as frictional force. Next question, the force produced when the surface of the two objects come to contact to each other and tends to move, but there is no relative motion between them, is known as static friction. What is friction? Friction is a force that combats relative motion between the two surfaces that comes at the contact. Friction always acts in the opposite direction of the applied force. Types of friction: static friction and rolling friction. What is static friction? The opposite force that comes into play when one body is actually not moving the over the over the surface of another body. Dynamic friction are always two types. So force here, rolling friction, the opposing force that comes into play when the body is actually rolling over the surface of another body. For example, hockey and cricket ball is hit, obviously the ball will move. So one is static friction, other is rolling friction. In the force direction, and friction, force direction and friction direction, you can see these are opposite to each other, and speed direction, rolling friction, you can see these are rolling. Next point is sliding friction. The opposite force that comes into play when one body is actually slide over the surface of the other body. For example, sliding off on the field of the cricket by a fielder. So opposite force that comes into play when the one body is actually slide over the surface of other body. So it is type of sliding. For example, sliding on the field of cricket by the fielder. Long time question given, friction is differentiate between advantage and disadvantage of friction in the field of sports. So here I have just noted down some advantages and disadvantages of friction. Like advantage, advantage of friction keeps the object at position by friction. The objects can be placed at position or shaped. Number B, helps to move frictional force. Frictional force helps to move the object by friction. It helps in running and walking. With friction, feet and shoes on the surface helps to speed. Frictional force helps to move the object in the speed. For example, spikes are used by the athletes to run fast. Number C, hold or grip an object. With the help of the frictional ridges of the skin, our fingers and our palm enable us to grab or hold the object. For example, in badminton, the players used to grip to hold it. Produce heat. The law of conservation of the energy states that the amount of energy remain constant, thus the energy that is. Disadvantage of the friction, wear and tear of the object. What is it? Due to friction, there is wear and tear of object. Lubrication is used to allow the parts of the move easier. Moreover prevents the wear and tear. Wastage of energy. Excess of friction means extra energy, thus energy is being wasted. Slow down the speed. In the roller skating, rolling shoes and smooth surface are used to minimize friction. Makes movement difficult. Friction can make the job more difficult when one has to move the object. Excess friction can make it difficult. Now some MCQ questions have been given. Now the chapter has been finished. I will come in the next video with some more important question about this chapter. Till then, goodbye to all of you.